Ruth, the power of loyalty and redemption, finding hope and purpose through commitment. In a world that often prioritizes self-interest and quick exits when the going gets tough, the story of Ruth shines as a powerful example of loyalty, faith, and the redemptive hand of God. Ruth's journey is not just a love story between a widow and her Redeemer. It's a love story between humanity and God, a testament to how unwavering commitment and trust in Him can transform even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for purpose and blessing. Today, we're going to dive deep into Ruth's story, drawing lessons from her steadfast loyalty to her mother-in-law, Naomi, her trust in God's providence, and the redemption that came through her obedience. By the end, you'll see how God's hand works in our lives, weaving our pain and faithfulness into a greater narrative of purpose and hope. 1. The context, from loss to loyalty. Ruth's story begins with tragedy. Naomi and her family, including her 2 sons, had moved to Moab during a famine. While in this foreign land, Naomi's sons married Moabite women, one of whom was Ruth. Over time, Naomi's husband and both her sons died, leaving Naomi, Ruth, and her other daughter-in-law, Orpah, as widows. For Naomi, the loss was overwhelming. She decided to return to Bethlehem, her homeland, believing there was no future for her in Moab. She urged her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab, remarry, and start new lives. Orpah tearfully agreed, but Ruth made a choice that would alter her destiny forever. With words that have echoed through generations, Ruth said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried." Ruth 1 verses 16 to 17. Ruth's loyalty wasn't just to Naomi, it was to Naomi's God. She chose to leave behind her homeland, her family, and the familiarity of her culture to embrace an uncertain future in a foreign land, trusting that Naomi's God would provide. Life lesson: loyalty often requires sacrifice. When we choose to remain faithful to God and to the people He places in our lives, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, we position ourselves for His blessings and purpose. 2. The journey to Bethlehem, trusting in the unknown. Ruth's journey with Naomi to Bethlehem wasn't just a physical one, it was a journey of faith. As widows, they faced poverty, uncertainty, and the challenge of survival in a culture that often marginalized women without husbands. Yet Ruth's commitment never wavered. Once in Bethlehem, Ruth didn't wait for someone to rescue her. She took initiative, asking Naomi for permission to glean in the fields, a provision in Jewish law that allowed the poor to gather leftover grain during harvest. Ruth's willingness to work hard, even in menial tasks, demonstrated her humility and determination. In the same way, God often calls us to trust Him in the unknown and take proactive steps of faith. Like Ruth, we may not see the full picture of what God is doing, but our obedience in the small, faithful acts opens the door for His greater plan. Life lesson: trusting God means taking steps of faith, even when the outcome is uncertain. Your willingness to act, even in small ways, can set the stage for God's provision and blessings in your life. 3. Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. While gleaning in the fields, Ruth caught the attention of Boaz, a wealthy and kind man who was also a relative of Naomi's late husband. Boaz was moved by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and her hard work. He ensured her safety, provided her with extra grain, and instructed his workers to leave behind more for her to gather. This act of kindness wasn't just about meeting Ruth's immediate needs. It was the beginning of God's redemptive plan for her life. Boaz would later take on the role of kinsman redeemer, a cultural practice where a relative could marry a widow to preserve the family line and inheritance. Boaz's actions point us to Jesus, our ultimate redeemer. Just as Boaz redeemed Ruth, restoring her life and giving her a future, Jesus redeems us from sin, brokenness, and hopelessness, offering us eternal life and purpose. Life lesson: God places people in our lives as instruments of His redemption. Whether we're in need of redemption or called to be a vessel of God's love for someone else, His hand is always at work through relationships and community. 4. Redemption and restoration, God's greater plan. Ruth's marriage to Boaz wasn't just the resolution of her personal story. It was part of God's grand narrative. Through their union, Ruth became the great-grandmother of King David and part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. What started as a story of loss and despair turned into one of hope, redemption, and divine purpose. God's ability to redeem is limitless. He takes the broken pieces of our lives, the loss, the pain, the uncertainty, and weaves them into a tapestry of His glory and goodness. Ruth's story reminds us that no situation is too far gone for God to redeem. Life lesson: God's redemption goes beyond our expectations. He doesn't just restore what we've lost. He uses it as a foundation for something greater than we could imagine. 5. Living with Ruth's heart. Lessons for today. Ruth's story isn't just about what happened thousands of years ago. It's a call to live with loyalty, faith, and trust in God's redemptive power today. Here are some ways we can apply her example to our lives. Commitment to relationships. Ruth's loyalty to Naomi teaches us the importance of being steadfast in our relationships. Whether it's family, friendships, or marriage, true loyalty reflects God's unwavering commitment to us. Faith in action. Ruth didn't just sit back and wait for God to intervene. She stepped out in faith, gleaning in the fields and trusting God to provide. We too are called to act in faith, even when we don't have all the answers. Trusting God's timing. Ruth's journey reminds us that God's timing is perfect. The seasons of waiting and uncertainty are often where He prepares us for the blessings ahead. Hope and redemption. Just as Ruth's life was transformed through her relationship with Boaz, our lives are transformed through our relationship with Jesus. No matter where we've been or what we've experienced, His redemption is available to us. Conclusion: a legacy of loyalty and faith. Ruth's story is one of courage, loyalty, and unwavering faith in God. It's a story that shows us the beauty of commitment, the power of redemption, and the hope that comes from trusting God with our lives. Like Ruth, you may be in a season of uncertainty, loss, or transition. You may feel like your circumstances are too broken or your past too messy for God to use. But Ruth's story reminds us that God specializes in turning ashes into beauty. He sees your faithfulness, your sacrifices, and your willingness to trust Him. even when the path is unclear. You are not forgotten. Just as God worked behind the scenes in Ruth's life, He is working in yours. Your loyalty to Him, your commitment to His calling, and your trust in His timing will not go unnoticed. In His perfect time, He will redeem your story, bringing purpose, hope, and blessing out of the challenges you've faced. So stand firm in your faith. Be loyal to the people God has placed in your life and trust in His provision. Like Ruth, you are part of a greater story, a story of redemption, love, and divine purpose. And just as Ruth's life left a legacy that pointed to Jesus, your faithfulness can leave a legacy that glorifies Him. Remember, with God, no act of loyalty, no step of faith, and no season of waiting is ever wasted. He is writing your story, and the best is yet to come.